countless factors that can lead to your death. As senior coroner, I deal with nearly 4,500 fatalities a year.
The coroner can make any inquiries necessary to find a cause of death.
The police act on behalf of the coroner. If the coroner asks, then we do it.
With unprecedented access, we follow the coroner's full investigation.
Somebody somewhere will want to know that this person's died.
We're taking pieces of the jigsaw to formulate a cause of death.
From the moment of arrival in the mortuary to the final conclusion of the inquest.
All rise.
I'm sorry that you're attending court under these circumstances, and I appreciate that the evidence that you're here today may be distressing.
I feel like no big event happened to cause this. I need answers. I need to know what happened that night.
If you die here, if it's violent, unnatural, or of an unknown cause, it's my job to find out how.
I was 13 when I met Jake. And then when I got to 16, that's when we ended up being together. He was just daft. So daft. You watch videos now, and it's of him like dancing in the front room, and he always just made me smile. I remember once he said to me, "I promise to make you laugh for the rest of your life." I loved everything about him. He's all I've ever known. In every, it was just what I was used to. He was my best friend. We were always together. Sorry. Yeah.
I got a text to say that Jake hadn't gone to work and they'd not heard anything of him.
Sometimes he'd skive and have a day off work if he had a bit of a hangover from partying too hard with his friends the day before, and that's what I thought it was.
So then I've rang my partner to go and check on him. It only takes minutes to get up to his flat. My partner's got into the flat. I've rang him like 10 minutes later and he's told me it's not good. I've just ran outside in my pyjamas, got my neighbour to watch the girls and ran up there as fast as I could.
Yeah, and I remember being in the car thinking, how are all these people on the road just carrying on with their normal business? Do you not realise my whole world's just fallen apart? It was horrible.
Hiya, is ambulance inside? Yeah. You okay? Hi. You alright? How old is he, sorry?
26. 26, 1 month.
Is he known to you guys for any sort of medical reasons or anything like that? No. So, last night he's been out. He has gone out for a meal with a lad from work. Family have told me that. It's gotten a bit later on and they've not heard anything.
We've received a referral from Lancashire Police overnight in relation to a 26-year-old male called Jake Broughton. Police received an emergency call after some of Jake's friends and family weren't able to get hold of him. His family have gone to his house to check on him and check he was okay, but sadly they have entered the house and found him deceased.
This is Jake Broughton.
Dr. Sissons will be carrying out an external examination on Jake.
My purpose is to check over the body to make sure there's no evidence of third-party involvement and to ascertain that it's consistent with what the police found. There's no obvious previous injuries there. Can we have a look at his back?
Yeah, of course.
And there's nothing at all there. I'm basically looking for any previous self-harm injuries, particularly to his wrists, checking the hands and the knuckles to make sure he's not been involved in any altercation, but at the moment I can't see any such marks. So we've identified a broad ligature mark which extends from below the right chin to the occipital region. When it happens completely out of the blue, I think it must be so hard to deal with for all those concerned, and it is massively sad.
In terms of Jake's medical history, he doesn't have any medical problems. He doesn't have a complex history in terms of his mental health, so sadly it does leave a lot of questions for the family.
There's a small bruise on the outer aspect of the right upper arm, 3/1 cm, but apart from this there are no other marks of injury or violence. Let's be done.
Jake's death is unexpected. His family have had no inkling of what was about to occur. We're trying to rule things out and give them the answer as to what caused the death. But until we have all the pieces, we can't give the family the answers they need.
I can't understand it, because he always seemed so full of life every time you saw him, you know, big smiles, belly laughing, and, you know, he started a new job and they're enjoying that. We had an air hostess girlfriend, you know, you think everything would be okie-dokie.
He's never said anything. He's always been happy. We didn't think there'd be anything wrong. Right now we've got a lot of questions going around our heads, but we don't have the answers for it.
At Jake Broughton's external examination, the coroner has ordered samples to be taken for the toxicology lab,
We've got blood and vitreous.
but has not requested any internal investigations or scans.
Toxicology is often important in situations like this to try and ascertain whether there was any drugs in the system of the deceased at the time of his death. Having completed the examination, I just provisionally give it a cause of death, and that's followed by a typed, detailed report of my findings and conclusions.
At the time of his death, Jake was training to become a qualified electrician, working alongside his best friend, Jack.
This van was spent every day in. Every morning I get in the van, connect my phone to Bluetooth, but I've always got to change the Bluetooth because the first name's Jake. So every day I've got to change it from Jake's phone to mine. I haven't brought myself to delete it yet. I think if I delete that, it's like it's over, it's done. Working with your best friend was the best time ever, you could say. Every day it was a case of what can we do that's funny, make each other laugh. We were working in a block of offices and the wall was getting taken out the next day, so we decided we were going to cut our own life-size cutouts of each other within the walls. It's hard to fill that gap. I've got another best friend that works with me, but it was the three of us. No, it was the tooth.
Jack's father John was with Jake the day before he died.
We have to do a health and safety exam every 3 years, and Jake got the highest score.
Because the picture's still on the computer in the account room.
Yeah.
That was the last day we saw him.
Yeah. He was supposed to be in the morning the next day at 7:15, but obviously he didn't turn in. There was nothing leading up to it that we were aware of at all. It was just like out of the blue. It was quite a shock, because I'd never expected anything like that at all. It's sad, isn't it?
It is.
We'd only seen him, less than a week before, you know. All fine, laughing and joking, usual Jake. When we went into the flat, there were a delivery from Amazon, and it's Secret Santa things for work. So why you'd think, why would you do that? Why, you know? Everything appeared normal.
He was just like a star entertainer. Always happy. He always had a lot of energy from an early age. He was so friendly. You know, we'd be sat in the house and there'd be a string of girls outside the window. But yeah, he had everything going for him. Literally everything. Because I'm mentioning his name, he sits there, looks towards the patio doors, waiting for him to walk in. It's as though it's not true, and he's just going to walk in that door.
That night, he'd been out for a meal with his friends, he'd been to work. I feel like no big event happened to cause this. He very rarely spoke about how he felt. Maybe every now and again he would express a few concerns about, you know, he was upset about a situation. But comments about his mental health or being unhappy were very few and far between. And he only showed very small snippets of sadness. He was like the life and soul. He'd always be there at the parties and out on the weekend.
Jake was such a lovely lad with a big personality. He just liked to party, have a good time with his mates. But his drinking, obviously, the recreational drugs, it scared me, really scared me.
He wouldn't openly tell you that that was an issue or say that he had a problem. He was very in denial with it. I would say that it was a problem, but he would not openly admit that.
In Blackburn, paramedics are rushing to the home of 69-year-old Leslie Hodgkinson, who's been found unresponsive. Attempts to revive him are unsuccessful, and he's pronounced dead at home.
First of all, my condolences.
Thank you.
Initially, I've attended scene following the report of a sudden death. The police protocols for us to attend on behalf of the coroner. We have to check the body for any marks to see if there's anything that would show that it would be a suspicious death. Obviously, for dignity, I've asked the family members to leave the room. He was very gaunt, quite slim, weak around the arms, like not a lot of muscle mass, which you would expect within the elderly.
Yeah, I'm happy this isn't going to be suspicious. Can we please get a duty funeral director out?
The thing that struck me is it was a bit of a treasure trove. He had animal collectibles around the house, and it was really a representation, I thought, of what his character was. It was very much his space.
We've had a death referred to us of a 69-year-old gentleman, Mr. Leslie Hodgkinson, and we are investigating this death because the family tell us that during his working life as an apprentice in a local factory, Mr. Hodgkinson was involved in the cutting up of asbestos sheets. The area in which we work was historically a very industrial area with a large working class population, so there was a large number of gentlemen of Mr. Hodgkinson's age who were employed in the local mills and factories. Health and safety was very different all those years ago. In fact, it was probably non-existent. So unfortunately, exposure to asbestos is something that we do see quite often. So what we need to establish now is whether or not that exposure to asbestos has caused or contributed to his death.
A limited post-mortem has been ordered to focus on his heart and on his lungs. That's where the illness that has killed him is most likely to be.
So I'm just going to remove the heart and lungs, so it's limiting the post-mortem as much as possible so that we disturb the body no more than we need to.
We know this man's a joiner, and people working as joiners might come across large quantities of asbestos which they have to deal with. Asbestos can cause tumours in the lung, which I'll be looking out for today, and they can also cause fibrosis, that's diffuse scarring of the lungs, and that's called asbestosis. So it's immediately clear that there is some asbestos-related disease. We've got a big lump of calcified fibrous tissue. They're called plaques, and that's actually stuck down to the lung here. So that plaque, although it's originated from the chest wall, has actually become stuck down to the lungs. It's not a serious condition, but it's an indicator that the person has been exposed to asbestos.
The invasive post-mortem needs histology to confirm whether asbestos has contributed to Leslie's death.
I'm taking lots of small pieces of lung tissue from both lungs, send them off to the laboratory, and they process them, and we end up having very thin sections to look at down the microscope to see if there's any asbestos-induced disease going on.
Asbestos is made up of very tiny, thin crystals that you can inhale into your lungs. In the 1960s and 70s, it was a very common building material. It was unknown that the dust caused significant illness to people breathing it in.
I'm involved with cases like this, I'd say once, twice a month, once a fortnight. So there's still a lot of asbestos-related disease to people getting exposed in the 70s and 80s.
The repercussions of the asbestos use is, 20, 30 years later, we're still seeing this, aren't we? Yeah.
Exposure to asbestos doesn't immediately cause problems, but when it does develop problems, they're usually serious.
Dr. Sissons must also take samples of Leslie's heart.
After we've examined the lungs and the heart, we'll hopefully be able to provide a cause of death. Right, I'm done.
The results of the external examination on 26-year-old Jake Broughton are being reviewed by Coroner's Officer Chloe.
Dr. Sissons said that the circumstances of the death, together with the findings of the external examination, are fully consistent with a death by hanging. We now need to wait for the toxicology, which could take a few weeks.
Dr. Avey has asked me to perform a drug screen to look for any drugs that may have been taken in the hours before he died. That may be prescription drugs to make sure he was adhering to drugs, or maybe he may have taken illicit compounds, or possible that he'd been drinking alcohol before his death.
Drink or drugs can affect the way that you perceive obstacles or difficulties when you're under the influence. We don't know whether or not he's had a drink, taken drugs, and whether or not this has affected the way that he makes decisions.
Our testing can provide the families with some useful knowledge of what happened in the hours before that person died.
I do think something will come back in toxicology. I don't think he'd have done that on a sane mind. Because, like, Arla was his world, like my first child.
One more time. Jake's turn. Rosie time. Rosie time.
We used to call him Uncle Jake, so he was the fun uncle. We'd dance around with him, soak him in summer like water fights.
We all fall down. Now sit on the floor. Get in.
I'm sure he wouldn't have done that to the kids.
Spin it around you.
I am doing, look.
I had a conversation with his niece, and she said, when Jake comes back down, and I said, Jake isn't going to come back down, and she said, why? And I said, because he likes it up there. And she said, but he liked it down here. And that really hurt, because I thought he liked it down here, but he obviously didn't like it enough to stay.
Coroner's officers are investigating the death of 69-year-old Leslie Hodgkinson and whether it's connected to asbestos. Leslie was a member of his local working men's club.
Les was your typical working class man from a northwest town. As soon as you walked in the room, it lit up. You knew you were in for a good night once Les come in. I heard about Leslie's passing through a phone call. As soon as I come off the phone, my wife said, who was that? And I said, it's Les. And she knew right away to come and give me a hug. And I'm not one for hugs, but she knew that night I needed a hug because I'd lost my best friend. Yeah. I think you can count your true friends on one hand. And I think he took 3 of my fingers up. So that's how close it was. It hit me bad. His love for birds were unbelievable. We used to go many a time over to Manchester to do his pigeon racing. He always made sure he come back the Bolton way where he could go and get a pasty. We used to have a lot of conversations, heart-to-heart conversations. And he used to tell me about his joinery days. In them days, joiners' shops usually made coffins as a sideline, and Les was cutting the asbestos to go inside the coffins. So he certainly did use asbestos, but it was the in material, weren't it? It was used for everything. See, there were no health and safety, were there? No. The only health and safety is making sure that you had your flask filled of a morning. Not what you had on your feet and gloves and goggles, it was what you had in your thermos.
At the lab, samples taken from Leslie Hodgkinson's heart and lungs are being prepared.
So we check what size the tissue is. We'll select an appropriately sized mould.
fill that up with molten wax, and then we position the tissue in there, and that'll hold it in position in the wax as it cools. Now we want them to be solidified, so this is a cold plate, and it's chilling those blocks down so that the wax will be nice and hard with the tissue supported inside it. So this is the microtome. So every time we turn the handle, it moves forward by 4 microns, and that's about 1 cell thick. And we've got these incredibly sharp blades. They're really, really sharp, so we have to be very careful. So we slot it into there, and that grips it in place. Moving this backwards to align the tissue up with that blade. Really gently and slowly. So we layer them down onto some nice warm water, and that just eases out any crinkles. Just guide it onto the glass slide, and then that's going to dry out here.
The final step is to dip them in dye to make the slides easier to see under a microscope.
Now that they've been stained up with the hemotoxin and the eosin, the pathologist will then be able to see all the different tissue components down the microscope. He'll be able to see each individual cell and all the architecture of the tissue, how it would have looked in the patient.
I'd definitely like to know what the cause of his death were, because if he died with asbestosis, someone's the cause of that.
Coroner's officers are investigating the unexpected death of 26-year-old Jake Broughton. His family is still processing what's happened.
I'm going to a friend of mine's salon for a tattoo. First ever tattoo, never thought I'd ever get one, but it's in memory of Jake. It's just an imprint of him on me for forever. I want Jake's name, and I want underneath me, my shadow and I, because that's what he was. Hello. Okay. Give us a hug. Right,
Let's go?
Yeah.
So nice and still, okay? As still as you can be.
He'll be laughing at me now, thinking, you silly old beggar. I just can't get my head round it. I don't think I ever will. And then you start asking yourself, well, why?
That's the biggest question, isn't it?
Yeah. I just don't get it. But at the end of the day, I think the men have been conditioned not to speak and keep the feelings inside.
As a man as well, it's the idea that men should be men and they shouldn't.
Well, that's so wrong. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. It's okay to talk when we're not okay.
Yeah.
Jake's family believe that he may have been hiding mental health problems around the time of his death. His dad, Keith, is heading to meet a men's suicide prevention charity near his home in Glasgow to search for answers.
Right, pal, you come. Just put them out so there's plenty of space for guys to come in, eh?
Okay. How many people are you expecting?
We've been averaging about 14, 15 here, so...
15?
Aye, which is good numbers, eh? So we'll see who turns up tonight. Obviously, we started in 2016 after a young man, Andy Roberts, took his own life. We just wanted to stop other families going through that loss and devastation and encourage the conversation. Because we're shit, as men, we're shit at talking about the stuff that we need to talk about, because we're not brought up like that. So I think it's important to open up and normalise the conversation around mental health and particularly suicide, because it's still seen as a taboo subject.
From my son's point of view, he never said anything to anybody. It was total shock.
Talking from my own struggles with mental health and a failed suicide attempt, I didn't want to talk to anyone about what I was going through. And I genuinely thought I was the only guy going through what I was going through and no one else would understand, because I was brought up that big boys don't cry. You should man up and shake it off and bottle it up. We now have almost 180 groups across the UK. Nearly 4,500 men a week walking through the doors. So if we can get a group within 30 minutes, every man in the UK, the more chance we've got is saving lives.
As you say, if it can stop one person from doing what my son did, then that's a positive to us. Good boy. Why didn't he ask anybody, or why didn't he talk to anybody, or why didn't he just ring me up? There's not going to be any answers, and that's just what we're going to have to live with.
Done. When you want, stand up slowly, and then you can check it out, okay?
Oh, wow. 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 Amazing.
I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when life is done. I'd like to leave an echo, whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and bright and sunny days. I'd like tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun, of happy memories that I leave when life is done.
Jake's death is an unnatural death and will have to go to inquest. But inquests quite often have unanswered questions. So it will be very hard to understand what has happened in his final moments. That's always with the deceased person.
Dr. Sissons is analysing samples of Leslie Hodgkinson's heart and lungs for evidence of asbestos damage.
Let's see what's going on in the lungs. Although we know this man has been exposed to asbestos, there's no asbestos bodies that I can see in his lungs. There's no evidence that he has asbestos-related lung disease.
At Blackburn Hospital, Dr. Sissons is continuing his analysis of Leslie Hodgkinson's heart and lungs.
So if we have a look at this bit of lung tissue here, compare this bit of lung tissue with what is going on there. There's loss of lung tissue in those areas. He's got cigarette damage to his lungs, and this is emphysema. Okay, this is a very thin section of heart. There's a lot of fibres which are just dead or degenerating there, so this just indicates that The blood supply to this heart has not been good for some time, which means there's going to be a lack of oxygen getting to these cells, and these cells will slowly die, and when they die they just get replaced with scar tissue, which can't contract or pump or do the job of the normal heart cells.
We've now received the post-mortem report from the pathologist, Dr. Sissons, and there's no evidence to suggest that that exposure to asbestos has caused or contributed to his death. The cause of death will be acute cardiac failure and contributing factors of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and pneumonia.
This is bringing back memories. When you lose a close friend, it takes some getting used to. And I miss him. I'll never find another friend like him. They're an absolute wonderful bloke. Yeah. 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 Les was happy outside with his birds. If he'd have been here now, he'd have been straight in that loft picking best pigeon out. God rest his soul, he would. We've got some speed on them. Les had a lot of influence on me. Oh, he rekindled my love for countryside. So that'll never leave me, so he'll always be here.
It's the day of Jake's inquest.
Good morning, can I take your name, please? Oh, yeah, wait.
I'm a bit nervous, a bit apprehensive, because you're just walking into the unexpected. You don't know what you're walking into, I suppose. It's horrible.
Feels a bit like a nightmare, doesn't it? So once this is over, hopefully we can start to rebuild ourselves a bit.
My name's Alice Swarbrick. I'm the Coroner's Officer Manager for Lancashire and Blackburn Withdrawal Coroner's Service. So the coroner today is Dr. James Aidley. He's the senior coroner. Coroner's Court is like a magistrate's and a Crown Court. The only difference is we can't prosecute, we don't apportion blame, we're a fact-finding process.
An inquest asks 4 questions. Who has died, where and when the death occurred, and usually the most difficult question of all, how someone has died. In this case, there's the question of, did he intend to take his own life and succeed by the means he adopted? And whether or not drink or drugs are related to his cause of death.
All rise.
To Jake's family and friends, I'm very sorry that you're attending court under these circumstances. Jake was a very pleasant young man who loved life and was the life and soul of the party. He was known by his nieces as Funkle for being the fun uncle that he was. He was also described by his partner and his sister as having a sensitive side, that he didn't deal with certain things very well and could take them out of proportion. This was especially the case if he'd had a drink. The toxicology found breakdown products of cocaine and ethanol, and this may cause cognitive and cardiac impairment. Now, I understand that you were the duty inspector. Could you tell me about the examination of the scene?
An attempt has been made, but that hasn't been strong enough, and Jake has sought out a second item to re-attempt.
Question here is, did he intend to take his own life? There are 2 attempts at a ligature, so in my view, he did intend to take his own life. This is an extremely tragic outcome, but it's a recurrent theme in the way that young men take their lives. It tends to be impulsive acts that if they'd had more time to consider it, they would still be with us today. Suicide is the leading cause of death amongst males under 35 years of age in the UK. And it's something that needs to be addressed in order to prevent tragic cases like Jake's occurring again.
You really have no idea the depths of what is going on in somebody's mind. And I think that is a big problem with men and mental health. I had no idea how intense these feelings and thoughts were going on, and I didn't know. Nobody knew. Otherwise, we would have definitely driven him to have done more.
The initiatives to try and get men to open up are so worthwhile. They stop families like this having terrible tragedies.
There is always an answer. I can tell you now that everyone would have solved every problem that Jake would have ever had to just have him here. If I could turn the clock back, I'd do so many things differently. But I can't change what's happened. I obviously wish I could. I'd take everything away. It's just my best friend, I've lost him. We're going to Jake's flat because although what happened in there wasn't nice, it still holds a lot of great memories. I've been here a couple of times since he's passed away. I stand here and remember times when we've taken selfies walking down these stairs and we've been on our way to a night out. And when he used to come home from work, he always used to look up at that window. And when he'd say, I'll be home at 6, and it got to 10 past, I'd be waiting at the window. And when he'd get in, he'd say, I knew you'd be looking at me out the window. I'd say, I've been waiting here for you. Yeah. It brings back a lot of memories, but good ones.
Police have attended the forced entry and sadly found this gentleman deceased.
No sign of any injuries to his face or head.
So I'm going to put a bit of fingerprint powder on now.
I'm a paramedic. We've got a patient. Got a heart rate of 172.
We was in a state of shock. It's gone from, oh, she's okay, she'll be home in the morning, she's just got dehydration, to she's in organ failure.
And that's cause of death, new next Wednesday at 8. If you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues raised in tonight's programme, please go to channel5.com/helplines for information and support. And you can watch the first 2 series of Cause of Death now on My5. Next tonight, Casualty 24/7, Every Second Counts.